Welcome back. President-elect Donald Trump meeting with Republican senators today in Washington to discuss their reconciliation strategy. Trump still keeping his options open on the best way to implement his agenda. Watch.
Well, I like one big, beautiful bill, and I always have, I always will. But if two is more certain, it does go a little bit quicker because you can do the immigration stuff early. I'm okay with spending cuts. I just don't want to see a default. That's all I want. I never talked about spending more money necessarily than all I want to see is no default. But debt ceiling is not about raising a lot of money. It's really just about extending it. I just want to see an extension.
With a razor-thin margin, lawmakers have told me that they are trying to appease certain lawmakers to get on board and agree to the border money as well as energy permitting and not give up if the SALT tax increase is not there. Politico reporting that the incoming Trump administration officials are planning to offer expanded state and local tax deductions at Mar-a-Lago meetings this weekend in exchange for those SALT Republicans to fall in line behind Trump's policy agenda, including a sweeping tax bill likely coming later this year. Joining me now is Georgia Congressman Austin Scott, a member of the House Intelligence, Armed Services, and Rules and Agricultural Committees. Congressman, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Good to see you too, Maria.
Where do you stand on this debate of one major bill or two? And do you think you're going to be able to rally your New York and California lawmakers into agreeing to all the other things if, in fact, they don't get their way on the SALT deduction?
Well, I think so. I think they'll get some expansion of their deduction, and the president's going to meet with them this weekend. Several of us are going to be down there to have discussions over how we move forward. I think that, the concept of one big piece of legislation, and, remember, we get two bullets, so why wouldn't you take the big bullet first and get everything you can, and then let's do a cleanup bill later on in the year as we can. But we don't need to leave major things undone in that first piece of legislation, especially the tax law. Remember, Maria, the tax law is the only thing that he can't do anything about with executive order. So, border security, energy, all of those other things, he's going to get some of that with executive order. It's the tax law that if that law expires at the end of, 25, that candidly would probably send this country into a huge recession because of the massive tax increases that come if we don't extend those Trump tax cuts.
Well, I mean, Jason Smith has been adamant in saying the tax extensions need to be done early in the year. Newt Gingrich told us you need to have that signed into law by July 4th. Otherwise, it's going to impact the midterm elections, and you guys will be voted out. So, right now, Lindsey Graham says the best way to do it is put taxes second. Is that where you think this is going?
I don't agree with Lindsey on that. I certainly respect him, but remember this: we're going to get a lot of the stuff with executive order on immigration and energy, and hopefully the energy takes care of inflation. If the tax law expires at the end of this year, 2025, then we're going to go into a major recession. And remember, Maria, as we go through all of these tough pieces of legislation, we've got a very, very slim margin in the House of Representatives. So I do think that it's best for the piece of legislation to come through the House first. That's going to be the tougher vote for us. And then, hopefully, it obviously pre-negotiated between, the Senate and the president. Then the Senate will be able to take it up. But as a business owner, I can tell you, we need certainty in that tax law before you start pressing into the summer and the fall months of the year, because as you have that uncertainty pushing into, January of 26, all of a sudden business owners are going to have to start making decisions based on the assumption that the law is not extended. So I think Jason Smith is right in that the tax law needs to go first. I hope that this does not become a my way or the highway for certain members of Congress, because if it becomes that, an issue of pride over authorship or strategy, then the American citizens are going to pay a very dear price for that.
All right, so we're really at the same place we were on Sunday when I spoke with Mike Johnson and Lindsey Graham and Ron Johnson about this, and that is the House and Senator split on how to execute Trump's agenda right now. We'll see what happens this weekend. Let me get your take on what happened yesterday. The House passed the Laken Riley Act. 159 Democrats voted against this bill. It requires federal immigration authorities to detain illegal migrants or immigrants arrested for theft and allow states to sue the Department of Homeland Security for crimes committed by illegal migrants. This bill, after Georgia nursing student Laken Riley was murdered by an illegal while jogging on the University of Georgia's campus. Pennsylvania Democrat Senator John Fetterman co-sponsored the Senate version of the bill. Even he called out his fellow Democrats for not backing it. Watch this.
Though it shouldn't be controversial to have a secure border, and the numbers are out of control, and you can be pro-immigration, but we need a secure border, and here we are now. When you have hundreds of thousands of people in our nation here illegally with criminal records, and some actively engaging in crime, well, then they all have to go, and I'm not sure why that would be controversial to anybody.
What do you say about this, that 159 Democrats voted against this bill, Congressman?
Well, first of all, my heart goes out to her family. I don't understand what they have done over the last 4 years, the Democrats to our country. I have I-75 that goes through the heart of my district. We have calls from judges on a regular basis talking about people that they've caught that they want to detain and turn over to ICE. But because the previous administration, or the current administration still, Joe Biden would not put detainers on those criminal illegal immigrants, that they had to turn them back out on the street. And so I don't understand how anybody could be opposed to the piece of legislation that we passed yesterday. I think it will be passed in the Senate. I think Senator Fetterman is exactly right. But there's a faction of that Democratic Party that in primaries, some people that are pretty normal up here are scared of because of what they'll do to them in the next Democratic primaries. And they demand open borders, and they, Maria, you know this as well as anybody, they use the term race as an excuse to not do anything, against criminal illegal immigrants.
Well, look, that was quite the press conference yesterday by President Trump talking about just this subject, this very issue that he wants to make sure to hold Mexico accountable for not stopping the illegals flowing into America. Now he's vowing to rename the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene already drafted legislation to make this happen. Trump pledged to acquire Greenland, the Panama Canal, and make Canada the 51st state. Congressman, some of this, I think, was a joke in terms of Canada. But what are your thoughts on what President Trump said yesterday on the Gulf of America and Panama and Greenland?
Yeah, well, let me start with Greenland. Geographically, there is a certain strategic importance there that most Americans probably have not gotten a grasp of yet. It is an important region for us as a country. It's important for global security. The Russians and the Chinese are increasing their activities in that region of the world. And so Greenland, it does have strategic importance. And I think President Trump, will ultimately want to get to some type of agreement with them where we have a relationship that's more mutually beneficial than the current one. Obviously, when you get to the Panama Canal, we built it, we paid for it, we should have never given it away. We did, and I think that when you look at the transit that goes through there, it's obviously one of the more important geographical areas, again, for commerce in the global trade. So he's right about looking at those issues. How we get to the resolution, I'll leave that up to the administration. As for the Gulf of Mexico or Gulf of America, again, and I've spent some of my best days on that water. I don't think the name of it is as important as how we're going to handle the law enforcement in that area. There's a tremendous amount of illegal activity that occurs in that body of water, and I think that the president is intent on stopping, whether it be the illegal fishing and the cartels are illegally fishing in that Gulf, or the illegal transit across the Gulf that's bringing narcotics and drugs into our country. So whether it's called Gulf of America or Gulf of Mexico, I care more about the enforcement mechanism in that body of water, making sure that the the illegal activity is stopped. Yeah,
and President Trump is focused on national security. That's why he's so focused
100%.
on Panama Canal, I think, because China
100%.
is using the Panama Canal. And
100%.
This is our number one adversary. Congressman, it's great to get your take on all of this. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Maria.
All right, Austin Scott is in D.C., and we'll be right back.